Welcome to Beautiful Thrift Homemaking. I'm Linda, and I'm reading a vintage cookbook that was published originally in 1917. I'm reading from a reprint from Dover Publications. The cookbook is called A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband, and we are in chapters 117 and 118 today. So we're going to be covering two little mini snippets of the story of a newlywed couple, Bob and Bettina, in their first year of marriage. We are in the month of February in our reading as we go through their first year with them starting in June. Chapter 117, An Afternoon with Bettina, we'll read, and then we'll talk about the recipes after we read chapter 118 also. So please join me and see if this is something that you'd be interested in. A little bit about life in a different era and recipes from a different era too. An Afternoon with Bettina. When Bettina pushed her tea cart into the living room, Alice and Ruth laid aside the mending at which they had been busy. "What delicious toast, Bettina," said Alice, taking one bite. "Why, it has cinnamon on it. And sugar. I wondered what on earth you were making that smelled so good, and this is something new to me." "It is cinnamon toast," said Bettina, "and so easy to make. I was busy all morning and didn't have time to make anything but these date kisses for tea, but cinnamon toast can be made so quickly that I decided to serve it." "I like orange marmalade too, Bettina," said Alice. "I wish I had made some. I have spiced peaches and a little jelly, but that is all. Next summer I intend to have a perfect orgy of canning. Then my cupboard will be even better stocked than Bettina's, perhaps. I opened a jar of spiced peaches last evening for dinner, and what do you think? Harry ate every peach in the jar. I had expected them to last several days, too." "I hope you saved the juice," said Bettina. "I did, but I don't know why. It seemed too good to throw away somehow." "Have you ever eaten ham cooked in the juice of pickled peaches? It's delicious. Just cover this slice of ham with the juice and cook it in the oven until it is very tender. Then remove it from the juice and serve it." "It sounds fine. I'll do it tomorrow." That afternoon Bettina served cinnamon toast, tea, orange marmalade, and date kisses. And we have Bettina's recipes for the cinnamon toast, Bettina's date kisses, and her orange marmalade. And we'll look at those in detail after we read our next chapter, which is chapter 118, A Washington's Birthday Tea. When the tea guests were ushered into Charlotte's dining room that afternoon, they were delighted with the table and its red, white, and blue decorations. In the center was a large three-cornered hat made of black paper and heaped with artificial red cherries. The cherry ice was tinted red and served in sherbet glasses. A large white cake, uncut, was one of the chief decorations, for halves of red cherries were placed together on it to represent a bunch of cherries, while tiny lines of chocolate icing represented the stems. Bettina poured the tea and placed in each cup a red cherry. The guests helped themselves to trays, napkins, forks, and spoons, and each took a portion of Washington salad, served in a small black three-cornered hat lined with waxed paper. Each took also a rolled sandwich tied with red, white, and blue ribbon, and a nut bread sandwich in the shape of a hatchet. The Washington fondant, rolled in coconut and toasted to represent tree trunks, with small gilt hatches stuck in them, occasioned great delight. "How did you ever think of it?" Ruth asked, and Bettina gave Charlotte the credit, though she in turn disclaimed any originality in the matter. "One thing is lacking," said Bettina. "Charlotte and I should be wearing colonial costumes. We did think of it, but happened to be too busy to make them." That afternoon, Charlotte and Bettina served George Washington salad, rolled sandwiches, nut bread sandwiches, cherry ice, cherry cake, and Washington fondant. And we have here Bettina's recipes for the Washington salad, the nut bread for sandwiches, and the nut bread sandwiches, plus Washington's birthday sandwiches. All right, so now we'll take a moment to discuss these recipes and look at them in detail. Okay, so now I have my notes on chapters 117 and 118, so we'll talk about what went on in those chapters. In an afternoon with Bettina, we see her tea cart is appearing again in this segment. Her tea cart is on wheels, and it's an antique piece, and it's for serving food in the living room or out on the porch. She loves to serve out on the front porch when the weather is nice. And in chapter 6 of this book, A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband, so quite a long time ago, we were introduced to the tea cart, and we're told that it's topped with a cross-stitch sampler from Bob's great-great-grandma, and then it has a piece of glass over the top of it to protect the cross-stitch sampler. So that was a wedding gift, and what a beautiful wedding gift that would be. Now, the girls are over. That's Alice and Ruth. I think these are Bettina's two best friends. They're doing their mending together. And I was at our public library recently and noticed little denim bags sitting on the counter at the checkout counter, and it said denim kit. And I said to the library technician, what are these? And she says, oh, people can check those out if they need to patch their clothing. There's little pieces of denim in there and all the things you might need to make repairs to your clothing. And I thought, wow, that is very interesting. So I think there's been a revival in patching. And I know there's right now a trend of wearing jeans with big rips in them, and sometimes they go really way too far, in my opinion. But there's also a trend towards patching creatively. And I know I've seen one lady on Instagram, she's up in Canada, and she's written some books on mending and all the different creative ways that you can do almost a weaving or an embroidery over a hole, and how to make some lovely fixes. So you might give that a try sometime if you've never done any mending. Look over your clothes and see what needs to be fixed rather than buying new or replacing. As you might remember at some point, if you've been with me a while, that we talked about those 6 R's, and I made a little diagram of the 6 R's. And I have here reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose, refuse, and repair. So repairing would be fixing it instead of tossing it. And that would be a way to incorporate mending and patching would be ways to incorporate that one of those R's into your clothing needs. All right, so that would also save you money and save resources and so forth. So the recipes in here had to do with some cinnamon toast. You're probably familiar with that. I don't know. That's something that my mom would serve to us, and we loved it as kids. We loved cinnamon and sugar on toast, with buttered toast. And it is something that oftentimes people will save a spice jar that has the shaker lid to it and use that to put in. It's usually recommended to do about 4 teaspoons of sugar to 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, but that ratio is really personal preference. And then there were these date kisses in this chapter, and I can tell you the recipe for that was for 1 dozen: 1 egg white, 1/8 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup powdered sugar, 1/4 teaspoon baking powder, 1/4 cup chopped dates, 1/4 cup chopped nut meats, and 1/2 teaspoon lemon extract. Bettina's date kisses are made by adding the salt to the white of an egg and beating the egg white very stiff. Then add the sugar, baking powder, nuts, dates, and lemon extract. Drop from a teaspoon onto a buttered pan. Bake in a slow oven until delicately browned, about 25 minutes. So, once in a while I'll give some of these recipes a try, and in this case I did give this recipe a try. A slow oven is 250 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And when I tried this recipe, I have the results here with me. I will open up this little container and bring some out to show you. I think that I may have made a mistake. She doesn't say how to incorporate the bulk of the recipe items into the egg whites that have been stiffly beaten. So I think maybe I overstirred because um, my date kisses came out flat like a cookie, just like a cookie. So you can see that there's chopped dates and chopped walnuts in here, and you can see the meringue from the egg white. And they're chewy and crunchy both, like meringue cookies are. And that's what they ended up looking like for me. However, since she calls them kisses, I'm thinking I have a recipe called the Forgotten Cookie, and it's a meringue cookie recipe that you preheat the oven, and then you whip up your egg whites and add in your nuts and your chocolate chips, and you put blobs of the batter on your cookie sheet, and then you slide that in the oven, close the oven and turn off the oven, and you leave it overnight. And those meringue cookies come out a little bit more peaked. And so I'm wondering if maybe these kisses are supposed to be a little more peaked. Maybe I overstirred because actually I used my beaters to mix in the ingredients. So I probably caused it to flatten out. And do I like them? Do I like the flavor? Well, I've mentioned before that lemon extract is added to several of her various dessert recipes when I think it's a little odd to add. And this is one of those cases that I have actually tried that and thought, no, I'm not sure. This actually tastes like a lemon cookie. Now, would you expect the dates and the nuts to prevail? Yes. But when it tastes like lemon, you kind of lose the whole date and nut flavoring. So I thought it was an odd recipe for that reason in particular. Now, her orange marmalade, I'm not going to give you her recipe because I want you to use up-to-date, safe canning guidelines. But I will tell you that she uses 3 oranges, 2 lemons, and a half a grapefruit and sugar. And that is what she uses to make her orange marmalade. All right. Now moving on to, oh, and I was going to tell you about orange marmalade is traditionally made with Seville oranges that are a bitter, sour type of orange. But she didn't pay any attention to that. She made her orange marmalade with just whatever oranges she had available to her, and adding in lemons and the grapefruit also. So it really is not that important that you stick to one variety that might not even be available to you if you wanted to make marmalade. All right. Next we have chapter 118, a Washington's birthday tea. And it is pretty fun that she has kind of like her 4th of July. She uses the red, white, and blue theme to be patriotic. And she has a white cake, and it's decorated with cherry halves with a little chocolate stems on the top. And then she's plopping a red cherry in each cup for the tea, which was interesting. I think she called that Russian style. And then she mentioned keeping something in a bread box, and I didn't know if you knew what a bread box was. Some of you are familiar with those, and some may not be. A bread box was a way to keep homemade bread fresh longer by putting it in a closed container that also had a little bit of air movement in it. So often there were bread boxes sitting on the counter in the kitchen for the bread to be stored in. Let's see, Grant Wood, yes. So I was going to tell you about Parson Weems's fable and how I mentioned that I just loved Absolutely love this. It's so delightful to me. So I have a book here about the artist Grant Wood, who was the one who painted, he was the one who painted American Gothic, this very famous painting. All right. And he painted this one here called Parson Weems's Fable. And so this is Parson Weems. And then here's little George Washington as a boy. Looked like a miniature adult version of George Washington. That's just so delightful. And then here we have his father. And there's that cherry tree that's been chopped. The trunk has been chopped. And there's the little hatchet. And so, and you see Parson Weems is pulling back the curtain of history to show us that fictitious event. So again, that's Parson Weems's Fable by Grant Wood. He painted that in 1939. And so this painting wouldn't have been out yet when A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband was first published, but yet the fable was already well known and well circulated in America at that time about our first president, George Washington. So Grant Wood is an artist, 1891 to 1942. He was a Midwesterner, an American regionalist painter. He was a veteran of World War I. And I thought I'd just mention that. In this chapter, we have the Washington salad. For 12 portions, you're going to use 1 cup of diced pineapple, 1 cup marshmallows cut fine, 1 cup grapefruit cut in cubes, 1 cup canned seeded white cherries, 1/4 a cup of filberts, 1/4 a cup of Brazil nuts cut fine, 1½ cups salad dressing, 1/2 cup whipped cream, 6 red cherries, and 12 tiny silk flags. Mix the pineapple, marshmallows, grapefruit, white cherries, and nuts. Add the salad dressing. Serve immediately. Place wax paper in the paper cups of the small black 3-cornered hats. Place 1 serving of salad in each cup. Put 1 teaspoon of whipped cream on top and half a cherry on that. Stick a tiny silk American flag into each portion. And then we have nut bread for the sandwiches, and we've had nut bread for sandwiches in another chapter or two. This one is made with, for 24 sandwiches, made with 2 cups of graham flour, which is a whole wheat flour, 1 cup white flour, 3 teaspoons baking powder, 1 egg, 2/3 cup sugar, 1½ teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup of nut meats cut fine, and 1½ cups of milk. Mix the flours, baking powder, salt, nut meats, and sugar. Break the egg in the milk and add to the dry ingredients. Mix thoroughly. Pour into a well-buttered bread pan and allow to rise for 20 minutes. Bake in a moderate oven for 50 minutes. 50. All right, so that's the nut bread for sandwiches. And to make the sandwiches, she's going to have you let it be 1 day old. And then you're going to cut it in very thin slices. You're going to cream some butter and spread on the bread carefully. And then you're going to place another piece on top and press firmly. And you're going to make all the sandwiches in this way. Allow them to stand in a cool, damp place for 1 hour. Make a paper hatchet pattern. Lay the pattern on top of each sandwich and with a sharp knife, trace around the pattern. Cut through carefully. And the sandwiches will resemble hatchets. This is not difficult to do and is very effective. All right, I'm not sure I would care for that, but I think it might be cute in a heart shape or a large daisy flower or something like that that's more clear of what it is. But she says it is effective, and you notice it's just a butter sandwich. And then for Washington's birthday sandwiches that were rolled, she uses a loaf of white bread that's 1 day old, 8 tablespoons of butter, and 2 yards each of red, white, and blue ribbon. What she does here is just another butter sandwich. She cuts the bread very thin with a sharp knife, removes all the crusts, place a damp cloth around the prepared slices. When very moist and tender, spread with butter, which has been creamed with a fork until soft. Roll the sandwiches up carefully like a roll of paper. Cut the ribbon into 6-inch strips and tie around the sandwiches. Place in a bread box to keep moist. Pile on a plate in log cabin fashion. All right, so that I think is something very different. So that's 1917. We're going to find things that are very different. So 2 different butter sandwiches and one rolled up. How's that for for a change, right? Okay, and we also had our cinnamon toast and our date nut kisses and the Washington salad. All right, hopefully you enjoyed these 2 chapters. We'll move on and completing the chapters for the month of February, the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.